the answer is that failure was not an option. So I guess when you're dealing with something hard that depends on other people and you have to really, really not have any possibility of failing, then you're going to overcompensate. And that's what I tried to do essentially is be so in and deep.
Hey, everyone. We have a very special guest with us today. He is Jeremy Sisselman, the founder of Bondway.ai. Full disclosure, I am an advisor to Bondway on the AI side. But needless to say, he explores, or he basically tells us the early foundings of Bondway, the struggles with fundraising, even though he made it look extremely easy, and kind of like the hockey stick customer traction that they've gotten to date. He walks us through the product itself and what it does. It really gives a lot of transparency to Bondway, the initial pain points that he saw, and kind of his perception on how to handle two different evolving user types: people that are extremely familiar with technology, people that are still kind of getting there, so to speak, within the bond market. And basically what it means to, in this day and age, to start a company post Gen I revolution. So that, obviously there's a lot more cost cutting if you can build a company that is pro Gen AI from the ground up. And so you guys should enjoy this episode. Thanks a bunch for tuning in. Let's start off talking about like early career, right? Like, just kind of give the audience a bit of your background and some of like the learning lessons you've had from the bond market and so forth.
Sure. Well, prior to founding Bondway, I spent about 16 years in the debt capital markets, and I was one of those right out of college number crunchers, lots of Excels, lots of PowerPoints, and spent many, many, many hours doing that kind of analysis. And then as I gradually got more senior, ended up running teams that would be producing that kind of analysis and really driving the content more myself. My role in the bond market was to work with the corporate issuers, so the ones issuing the bonds that would then trade in the secondary market. And it was really my job to help distill the bond market into useful information that was relevant for that audience and give it to them in a digestible way.
I see. So you've kind of just always had a knack for, I would say, distilling complex ideas and conveying them in a lay way or in a way that's consumable for another person.
I think that's right, because the corporates, they're only in the bond market every so often. So they really only want to hear the most important things that are relevant for them. And you're also competing against 20, 30 other banks doing the exact same thing, covering those exact same clients. So to get mind share, you really have to stand out with the kind of work you're putting together, the ideas you're putting together, the content. And so it really forces you to do a very good job, or it should anyway, drive you to be able to distill data and tell stories with that data ultimately.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. That kind of brings me back to my early, data science days when it was called data science, being a data storyteller. Right. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the very first incarnation of data scientists were folks on a trading desk. Right. That is frankly one of the best places for AI machine learning algorithms to thrive. It's very data heavy. It's very numbers heavy, and it's what do you call that? There's high stakes, right? So there needs to be a lot of analysis around like certain decisions, right? And so that was one of the. It's as long as time has passed, it's one of like the OG places for AI and machine learning. And it seems like you guys have spotted an opportunity there with Bondway. Is that right?
I think so, and we're certainly hearing that from our clients. The AI. I mean, you talk about AI and its application in finance and in the bond market. There has been very little, almost barely any at all before us. I'm not saying there was zero, but AI has really not taken off in the bond market, and that's surprising and a very attractive opportunity because the bond market is so vast, not just individual bonds, but all the different dynamics of all the individual bonds, prices, yields, spreads, maturity dates, ratings, sectors, issuers, yields, spreads. I mean, there's a million different things for every possible bond, and every bond has their own technicals and trading dynamics and trading volumes and patterns that play into each security. So when you multiply that by tens of thousands of different traded bonds and trillions of dollars of traded bonds, it's pretty interesting when you start thinking about the applications of AI in that kind of space.
Gotcha. Okay. So what can you say about, like, just to give like users to a feel? I mean, it's clearly very, very important to have like analyses and information around bond trading, right? As you put it, right? It's very high stakes. But what can you give the audience? Can you tell us a bit about Bondway? Like, what is it? How'd you come up with the idea?
Absolutely. So Bondway is an AI-powered analytics platform for bond market professionals. And that could be traders, it could be bankers, it could be corporates issuing bonds. There's a lot of different types of players in the bond market, but actually a lot of them, the needs or the problems that people currently have, regardless of seats, haven't been met and aren't being met. And so we're trying to deliver solutions that use AI to answer those very questions. So it is a web-based application. It gives you visualizations. It lets you manipulate data in complex ways, but we try and make it really simple and intuitive and a pleasurable user experience to work with the data and to see things. In terms of the benefits we try and provide, one is we're going to help you find trade ideas. So we're going to help you see things, and when you see more trading dynamics and more securities, you're going to find more ideas than you could if you couldn't see them in the first place. We're also going to help you spot trends, market color, things that you can use in interactions with clients, or things that you can take and then go apply in the marketplace with trades. And finally, we're going to save you time. We talk about turning hours into seconds. Sometimes it's turning days into seconds because we're just enabling a whole scale of analysis that you could never have done before because of how slow and manual the bond pricing process has been. So I know you also asked about like how I thought of the idea, but I just did a lot of talking. So do you want me to switch to that or?
Yeah. So I mean, as I understand, yeah, that was a loaded question I asked. It's easier to ask questions than it is to answer. So my fault on that. But so it's basically a tool to assist in the transparency and the kind of consumption of data within the bond market, because as you know, it's the bond market is it's a bit of a laggard to the equities market when it comes to technology. And we could talk about that later, but I'd love to get your opinion on whether or not that gap is closing, will it ever close, and so forth. But yeah, so this is like a big first step towards the transparency and a technological leap. How did you come across this idea?
Yeah, so in terms of the idea, was really trying to think of something entrepreneurial I could do that would leverage my background and my specific connections in the industry, and more importantly, address problems that I had faced. These you always hear people talking about it. Start businesses that solve real problems or fix problems that you've had. And these were problems that I was having. And I was pretty sure other people were having them too, although no one really talked about it. It was, I think, kind of understood that that's just how it was. And I think most people just assume that's how, they just assume that's just how it is. That's how it'll always be. And, one day it dawned on me in probably about 2022 that when I graduated in 2007, what I was doing in 2007 and what people were doing fresh out of college in 2022, pretty much exactly the same thing. Same spreadsheets, same processes, same amounts of time. And it just didn't make any sense that why is there so much technological innovation in every other area except for this?
Gotcha. Okay. And so like, what were the moments though? Like where like, meaning like, were you just having a conversation with somebody and you were like, it just dawned on you like, hey, I'm ready to basically take the plunge. Like tell us a bit about how like the moments where you were just like, okay, I'm ready to do this. Let me go recruit a technical founder and actually make a business out of it. Because, to I guess like veer from the path of a cushy financial job, right? Being trader is highly lucrative. I mean, that's like one of like, the apex predators of like of the income market here in New York, right? And so to forego that, right, that career path and go start a company, like tell me a bit about that. Like when did you know that like, hey, this is an idea worth pursuing, and it's going to be profitable, and we could turn it into a venture scale company, basically.
Sure. Look, I was so interested in entrepreneurship for so many years. I started out of college really, really interested in finance more than anything. And I found a role that was pretty much perfectly aligned with what I wanted to be working on, which was finance. And it was and has been great. And I'm super thankful that I did that for so many years. Obviously could never have been where I am today without that. But I was always, you were talking about the income stuff and, we call it golden handcuffs in the industry. It's like, they're gold, but they can kind of be handcuffs because your options, if you wanted to stay at a similar income level, would be very constrained and very probably impossible almost anywhere else. So it's a factor. And so for so many years, I would say that I was always reading about entrepreneurship, thinking about entrepreneurship, always kind of brainstorming passively usually, but just thinking about what I could do because I really love running my own thing. And I've always been a real self-starter. And I think also just like the idea of controlling my own destiny really appealed with entrepreneurship, that you can put in everything and get out, maybe everything one day as well. Whereas, in finance or in banking, a lot of times, no matter how hard you work or how good of a job you do, it's not fully up to that, right? And there's always going to be external factors. So I think the other part of your question was like, well, how did you come up with this idea that would be, impactful enough or
That's
worth
right.
pursuing?
That's right. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people, I mean, it's a great story, but there's a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs for the sake of being an entrepreneur. But like, there also has to be, and this is probably more important, a problem that is worthy enough to be solved.
Yeah.
Right. By you. Right. Not by anybody else. And there's a timing thing. And, there's a whole component of like validating the hypothesis that you have in your head to minimize risk. And if you could tell us a bit more about that, that would be great.
Well, along the way, right, with this brainstorming, I was having some ideas I thought were good, but just I had nothing to do with that. Like I had this one for an app that's like, you like go up to a bar. It's sort of like a deli counter number thing, but for a drink, like a cocktail, and you like put anyway. It's a cool idea. It could revolutionize the way bars work, but like I don't know anything about that industry, and so I would once in a while stumble upon an idea like that, and then be like, well, but who am I to do that? And with this one, when I had the idea, again, it was about a real problem. These are all the things you learn about business growing up forever, right? Fixed problem. And then it was something I knew a tremendous amount about. And then it was also, the bond market, despite not being well understood by the masses, is a tremendously large market where significant amounts of money are trading hands every day, every year. It's just a massive space, meaning that if we could sell a product that was going to be impactful for the bond market, you could potentially make quite a lot of money. And so I think that when it came to that decision that you're talking about of like how to, when to go risk it all, first of all, I just truly believed in this because I wanted it so bad myself in that role. And I also just believed in the market power. I believed I understood that this didn't exist and that it should exist. And, I think the final thing was, my wife and I decided that it was worth taking the plunge on, and that, life is about the moments where you go for it, obviously with foresight and a lot of budgeting in my case. Really?
Yeah, no, I mean, you took, quite a risk, right? I mean, of course, if you're like a singles, 20 something in, bachelor, okay. They tell you to swing for the fences, right? Like that's just like what happens here in America. But, in your case, like, you really took a sizable risk with a young family, and yeah, like your first time founding a company, right? A tech startup. So, that's great. So how was it like recruiting John or our friend Red, or whatever you want to call it, we should call him? How did you? Because that's like one of the hardest things to do is to recruit technical talent. And he's quite the talented co-founder. He's repeatedly found startups, and he actually sold one to NASDAQ. And yeah, to tell me what that was like, recruiting, because being an idea guy is one thing, but then convincing somebody as talented as John, how did that happen?
Well, I don't know that I would use the word recruiting, because I'll tell you the story. So first of all, like when 5 years or so before deciding to go found this company, I had actually been talking to him because we've been friends for about 15 years, very close friends. So I was talking to him about this issue of pricing in the bond market, and I was trying to explain it to him just casually on like a Sunday or something. And eventually we could, kind of just fizzled out that, I was thinking too much about how to fix the problem in my current seat as opposed to in the industry. I wasn't there yet mentally. But when this idea really came up, and I was like, wait a second, like that is a perfect idea of something worth building that could make a lot of money. I approached, what I thought of as my computer guy, which is pretty funny because he's extraordinarily advanced in technology as an engineer. But it's very hard to know that when you're non-technical, like how good with computers is this person exactly? And, I thought he was going to be good, but yeah, I definitely got really lucky. Anyway, but back to the word recruiting. So when I was first telling you about this idea, I was sort of like, hey, would you think this would be something you could build? Would it be something you would want to build? And I was in my head thinking like maybe on the nights or weekends, because he has this job, and he's very happy in the job and whatever. And almost immediately he's like, yeah, I think I'm going to quit my job to build this. I'm like, what? Really? He's like, yeah, this is a viable business and you can't build something like this without it being a company. And, that was very exciting, to say the least. And sure enough, like he took a few days to think about it and resigned very shortly thereafter. And we just got right to work. So I wouldn't say I recruited him. I think he recruited himself. But I do think that's really important, because we're a year and a half in, and you've started companies before, but like people that maybe haven't, you're working on it all the time. You're thinking about it all the time. It's always with you. You're never stopping. And you need a certain, I think there's this new Paul Graham essay, founder mode, right? It's like you need to be 100% all the time and scrappy and relentless. And I think that is relevant to the word recruiting because, to just recruit someone, it almost implies they're not going to be as part of it as you are. And you really need that in the technical co-founder.
Yeah, no, he seems like he was very, very convinced without putting in, any type of persuasion on your part, right? Which could be the fact that you're just that talented of selling the story, because it sounds like you guys have had a lot of success in recruiting or getting talent or getting people to quit their jobs and join you guys. So you're a year and a half in. Like, tell us a bit about the headcount that you have and the kind of the growth of the company and so forth since what you guys first started.
Yeah, so we're a team of 8 full-time now. That's half engineers and 3, sort of including myself, bond market professionals and an executive assistant. So it's amazing having a team of 8, and definitely have to pitch myself sometimes, but it's really fun to have this many people working full time on Bondway. Then we have advisors as well. And I think in terms of the journey of the company, obviously we had a long period of development, or I guess seems long to me, but in the world of engineering, not long at all. In fact, extremely fast. So yeah, I just think bond people have a different perception of time than people in technology for good reason. But basically, we developed a product. We tried to get it out in people's hands as early as possible in our beta phase. Definitely, did that MVP thing as best we could within the marketplace, and eventually determined it was at the point where it was ready to be sold. Start selling the product. That was really only a few months ago, and we've already brought some customers on board as subscribers, and we have a pretty healthy pipeline. A lot of customers that have been in trials for a long time and are getting really good usage and benefits, and are working on purchasing right now. So we've been very fortunate to have hit some kind of, I'm not going to call it product market fit yet, because I wouldn't say that we're there by the definitions I've heard in terms of, the pace and relentless demand. We're not there yet. But I think we're right on the edge of it. It feels like, and it feels like where our product is at, people are really, really excited about this. And yet there's a lot of people that still don't understand. They don't understand what it is. They don't understand how to use it. We find that the people that spend more time on the product, more time learning the product, more time with us, picking things up, changing how they do their work, they end up using it even more and more and more. It's like the deeper you go, the deeper you want to go, and the more benefits you get. But there's plenty of people that have never seen anything like this, so they don't know what it is or how to use it. And that's on us to keep making it easier to pick that up.
Gotcha. Okay, that totally makes a lot of sense. Now, tell us a bit about the journeys of. I mean, I do have some questions on your fundraising as well. It sounds like you not only have you had a lot of success recruiting, but fundraising, which you also make sound easy. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, yeah. Okay.
But before we get there, look, you mentioned a lot about your customers, and the ease of use, the frictionless onboarding, and so forth. I happen, obviously, I've been keeping in touch with you guys on almost a weekly basis. tell me a bit about like that customer growth, like, and what's your target ICP? What's kind of like the biggest pain point that Bondway addresses for these customers? And if you have like a customer story, that'd be lovely as well.
Sure. I mean, so many stories. Look, in terms of ICP, I get the sense this is a bit of a no-no that, people usually want you to focus on a very narrow slice that you can do very well in. But in our market, there's just so many potential customers and their needs really aren't that different, even though they might not know that. We know that because the customers we talk to and who we are, like our backgrounds have worked in the space. And so we are trying to sell to a number of different segments, which includes banks, investment banks, really, which is sales and trading, DCM bankers, syndicate bankers, corporate finance bankers, and then also the buy side. So that's institutional money managers, be they asset managers or hedge funds or insurance or pension. We also have a lot of the corporates getting on Bondway and using Bondway to monitor their own bonds and help find opportunities, see trends in the bond market. So a lot of different groups that we're pursuing. And I think you were also asking about customer stories, right? Like user growth and customer experiences. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So, like, what's like some of the biggest pain points and stories that really you guys have answered to?
The pain points is there's hundreds of them. That's what's so amazing. Like I knew of dozens at least, like when I was starting the company, but the more customers we talk to, there's always new pain points or repeated pain points that, oh, can it do this? Can we do this one day? I want it to do that one day. And that's amazing because people telling us that means, we always write it down and then prioritize into the tech queue. So it's a very open road in terms of ways to add value to this customer base. But, high level, it's data analysis and it's not being able to see the bond market. It's like if each bond without Bondway might take about a minute to get a decent price on that's reliable. You're not going to be able to look at too many different time periods or too many different bonds because it would just take too long. So, and if you use other sources, a lot of times they're so unreliable that you're looking at a picture that's a graph, but it's completely questionable and not trustworthy. So like, why even look? So I think.
So what's not trustworthy? Like there's just a certain opacity.
The pricing. It's the pricing, and
right.
at every single second. Most bonds in the bond market are questionable where the price is, like on some level. Some of them, there's virtually no question, but I would say by far the majority of bonds is up to interpretation. So you need to have, historically, you've needed to have training to know how to sift through this data and interpret it to give a price. And so if you think about looking at a historical graph, well, if some pricing service was giving you inaccurate data at every different point along the way, what are you looking at a picture of? It doesn't mean anything. It's useless. So basically, I think when it comes back to pain points of these customers, downloading data, trying to clean up that data and put it into a presentation, or only being able to see, we call it like looking at an ocean, but you can only see the surface of the ocean. You can't see anything below it. We let you see the whole ocean, the entire depth, everything all at the same time. So we're enabling users to get past those two issues, high level, that they can have highly accurate and reliable pricing for everything, or filter out pricing that's unreliable because we tell you. And then you can graph that in all different kinds of ways. And so you're looking at real pictures, and it's all real time. So you can see things happening instantly and throughout the day, which means that you can go capture opportunities that other people couldn't capture because they can't see them in the same way that you can.
That's right. So like basically, in short, like there's transparency to an otherwise very opaque market. right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's in real time. It's in real time, so people can act on it.
That's right. The bond market is historically, people use the word opaque a lot. It's just, it's illiquid, it's opaque, it's technical. It's, you have to be an expert to know what the price is of something. I mean, it's got problems, and I think transparency is a good word for what we're doing to this market.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, what? It's a little fun detour if you care to humor me. Tell us a bit about like what a trader does. Like there's some of the audience that probably they don't understand what a trader does, and why like opacity might be a problem, and why transparency would be a kind of a good thing. And then like I'd like to get your input on. I mean, do you think an AI could ever do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I mean, traders are one type of customer we serve, but since you asked about them, look, usually a trader will trade a sector. A lot of times anyway, they'll trade a sector. Oh, I trade technology, media, and telecom. So all the bonds in technology and media and telecom, if you're a sell-side bond trader, would be your space. And then you're going to have certain credits or companies that you particularly trade, and some you don't really trade. And then each of those companies, like if you trade Apple as one of, you almost definitely trade Apple, you're going to probably trade like no more than a dozen Apple bonds, but there's probably like 50, 60 Apple bonds. And you might trade less than that, fewer than that. You might trade, 3 or 4 Apple bonds. So there's all these other bonds that are just not being traded. Or not, I won't say not being traded. I would say not being actively looked at. So if someone came in and they wanted to trade one of those bonds, as the trader, you could get smart on that bond in, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever. You could go and make a trade, but you don't have the full visibility of the entire space that you should have. And that's kind of like what Bondway is enabling you to do when you're a trader. It's eyes and ears on everything. And so you asked also about, wouldn't AI be able to do this? I guess I would need to better understand your question, because AI is enabling us to let people do this. But what did you mean by that?
Just like, so the trader is like someone that kind of, as I understand it, they serve a purpose, right? They're human in the loop, and they serve a purpose in terms of analyzing data, making decisions, and acting on opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's to say that an AI agent can't do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not going to say that there's no human role in this. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I think we're talking about, the future as well. So one thing that a trader like I just described does is they'll send out what's called runs, which is basically lists of bonds and prices, and you'll send them out throughout the day to your client base so that they can see where your pricing is on everything. I usually use the analogy of like when you go to the airport, you're going to buy and sell euros or sterling or yen. You go to the FX desk and there's 2 different prices you would buy or sell depending on whether you're trying to buy and sell. There's 2 different prices. Really works the same way. The reason that desk exists at the airport is they make that spread between the buy and the sell, and that's how they make money. Works the exact same way with traders of bonds. So when you talk about like an AI replicating something like quote generation, first of all, I think that's already happening. I mean, it is already happening. What the technology is that's underlying it, that one's a little bit, I can't say I'm the most familiar in detail, but put it this way, like when we release our API with all of our pricing and confidence data, these kinds of traders would be one of the target customers, because they could take our highly reliable pricing and confidence data and then apply, a spread, right? The quote is 2-sided. So there's the buy and the sell. And how big is that spread for each bond? This seems very ripe to apply AI to. And that's why I say it's already happening, but I think the pricing sources haven't been that reliable. But that's only
spread's kind of a slang for like profit. I mean, I'm just trying to help out the
I think
here.
it's the difference between the price you would buy and the price you would sell at. It's that difference. If you buy at 85 and you sell at 90, there's 5 in the middle. That's the spread, right? And so you have a two-sided market so that you can make money and facilitate this service, so that when you go to the airport and you want to buy yen, they're ready to buy yen.
Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to, obviously we know what spread is. I mean, that's a very common term in financial lingo, but just for the audience sake, how do you plan to, how do you plan to stay ahead of your competitors? Like, what do you think the AI footprint is within the bond market as it sits today?
So I'll start with that first question, the second question about where AI is in the bond market today. It's almost not there at all. It's crazy, but like I went to this conference a few months back, and there was a handful of traders from a big bank at the conference speaking in a panel. And I asked this question, I'm like, how do you, and they had not seen Bondway yet. And I asked them, how does AI play out in the bond market? Where do you see it? And they all looked at each other and they're like, we don't, it's not there. Not to say that no one's developing anything that couldn't be called AI, but no one yet, hopefully, and kind of, I would say it's fair to say ourselves excluded, no one is doing these things in the bond market right now. So it's just not there yet. As to your other question about how do you intend to stay ahead of your competitors? So this is the question I get asked a lot. And I kind of think it's all in the quality. A very good product that meets very real needs very well and is like a pleasure to use and a reasonable price and performs and is accurate, reliable. Like that's a product that's going to win. And, our existing suite of features, and there's many features already, only 18 months into development.
That's right.
Billionaire 1.0, we have a suite of features, including many that aren't available anywhere else. But we also, I mentioned earlier when customers mentioned pain points, write them down. We have literally hundreds of product ideas that are in the backlog and that we are developing. And you have to relentlessly prioritize because you can only work on, one or
so many things,
one thing per engineer at a time or whatever. But we're going to keep on adding new things. We're going to keep on adding value. We're going to keep on enhancing our product all the time. And a big part of that is knowing the customers, being able to listen to the customers, being organized enough to do what I just said. And the other part of it is technology and having really, 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 really good engineers that can deliver an extremely performative product.
Yeah, no, you don't have to. Yeah, meeting your engineering staff, you guys are quite talented. Obviously, John has, like, again, repeated founding experience. Can you talk a bit about like a recent feature that you guys released? Just again to give like a very, very tangible idea of what the direction you guys are going in.
Sure. Well, I think like one that's really, really exciting is primary messaging. So we enabled teams to comment on live transactions with each other on our platform, and they are able to collaborate on our platform and share institutional knowledge so that then they can use that institutional knowledge more effectively across the organization with all the right permissions, right? Because it's not like a free-for-all. Not everyone can get access to every type of information, but it allows for creating like an institutional database and repository of proprietary knowledge and color So that's a really exciting thing. And, we've really only just started to roll that out, but we're really excited about all the potential there. It's always good to do things with network effects. We've also unveiled other collaborative features recently that are going to make it easier and easier to work on Bondway as a team. But yeah, that's really just a sample. There's a lot of other things that have been released recently and are in the process right now.
That sounds exciting. Yeah, congrats on that release. I think that we'll be looking forward to hearing the results of it in the near future. Now back to the original question. Obviously, look, you guys are doing pretty well from a customer standpoint. So maybe this question is a moot point, but I'd love to understand how did you have so much ease when it came towards the fundraising process? And you said that like it was difficult, but look, you're a first time founder, and it seemed like a rather seamless process. Obviously, I'm interfacing more with the technical department with John. But yeah, tell us a bit about like the fundraising process and why was it so easy for you guys? Easy.
I wouldn't use that word. It might seem that way. Hopefully, it made it look easy. I've heard that before, but it definitely was an unbelievable grind and extremely challenging, and it's an ongoing challenge. Even though right now, I think it's and feeling good about that. And I'm trying to just think from a third party perspective, but I think maybe the answer is that failure was not an option. So I guess when you're dealing with something hard that depends on other people and you have to really, really not have any possibility of failing, then you're going to overcompensate. And that's what I tried to do essentially is be so in and deep in the fundraising and touch every single possibility to overshoot what we actually needed. It's possible we could have done a fundraise that was significantly larger than what we actually did. People tell you, like in books and just other entrepreneurs tell you, a quarter of the people that say they're going to invest are the ones that invest. And there's a lot that don't. I actually found it was more like a fifth of people that you thought would invest. Sometimes people you think will invest
would
a
not
lot.
Invest?
No. Like you can maybe count on a fifth of whatever you're talking to and expect.
I see.
Yeah, it's very
actually converts.
Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, it's money. Money. People get weird with money, and we had many weird things happen. There were people that told me, "Oh, I'm going to, definitely invest and give you $500,000,000," and then ghost me, and
oh, I've been too familiar with that.
It's like, oh, you're going to be my lead investor. Oh, I'm never going to talk to you again. And things like that happen like a lot. So
how did you keep your head up?
It was hard. It was so hard. Oh God, it was. I think you just have to. I had to learn two things really. One is that people get weird with money, and that only a fifth are going to actually do it. You have to learn that. Even if people tell you, like, even if someone's listening to that and they're like, I don't believe that, it's like, you're going to find out yourself. The other thing I had to learn is that you shouldn't get too excited about any potential investor until the money's in the account. Because it's really easy to imagine, oh, this and this person or this and this fund, and oh, we're going to have this incredible investor, and you can your mind can go down that
games
road.
On you.
But
you envision this future together, like you're getting married.
Really. But so many times I had to get so disappointed by that now when there's a potential investor, I'm like, yeah, probably nothing will happen. That's how I think about it right now.
You have expectations.
It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my company. I think it's just the nature of venture investing. And it's just the space is how it is. From what I can tell. I mean, I've only done this once, but that just seems to be how it goes. I mean, I haven't even done a venture round yet. We did ours with mostly friends, families, angels, industry people, but I've heard this saying from a VC actually that you have to, kiss 100 frogs to find the prince or something. And yeah, I mean, I think in all seriousness, from what I've heard, like maybe with friends, family, angel, industry people, you're going to get a fifth if you're really, really good. For VCs, it's probably a much, much, much smaller. It's like the 1%, and you really do have to meet many people. I could go on, but that's kind of what I would say on that.
Yeah, no, thank you for diving into that. I think that that gives me like a lot of color that I didn't otherwise expect, and it seems very, very in line with my expectations, having experience in fundraising as well. How did you weather some of the? I mean, because for me, it wore on me, fundraising, all those morally. Right? Like how did you keep the spirits up? Like how did your co-founder John play a significant role in that? Did your wife play a role? Like how did you find emotional support in those times where you were just constantly being misled, ghosted, or false expectations and whatnot?
Yeah, I would even broaden that because it is a fundraising thing and the emotional toll it takes on you. But even I would maybe just also include like those early days of entrepreneurship when people are like, your idea sucks. That's never going to work. Or like, why didn't so-and-so just take you over or whatever?
Right.
The naysayers.
Why doesn't Bloomberg just do this? Right. Like why, if they just turn and do this, well,
the amount of times I've heard that question, I mean, you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would, but I think so like that is a part of entrepreneurship, especially in the early days and part of fundraising. I think the book you recommended, actually, Fundraising by Ryan Breslow, which I read like 10 times or something to try and absorb.
It's a great book.
Yeah. But he says this thing in there that I think is very true. It's like at first, you're the only one that believes in this. And then you have your co-founder who also believes. And then you have, your first investors who also believe. And then the next investors, and then your employees, and then your customers, and so and so on. It's this snowball effect. But early on, you are basically all alone, and you have to just believe so passionately that it's going to work and that you're going to be able to do it. So on the fundraising, it's very hard to understand why someone wouldn't want to invest in this. To me, like I don't understand it. Actually, I still don't understand it. But it's happened so many times, So I think again, I just now accept it as a fact of life that people are weird about money, or they're just all in their own worlds. They have their own specific things going on, and I don't know, or they're risk averse, or who knows what. But it is certainly a big moral weight. And how do you deal with it? Therapy, working extra hard, like doing more meetings. I mean, there were, you do like 8 meetings a day sometimes. And a lot of times I get to the end and
you were constantly on the phone.
Someone's going to be like, yeah, I'll send you $2,000, after like a long investor call. And it's like, you just never know until you do that call, like what's going to happen. And by the way, we still appreciate the people who did $2,000 because they add up as well. But you never know how big of a check someone's going to be, if they're going to ghost you. It's just, you just have to shoot for the moon, I think, and have a really good product and team.
That's right. But you guys did it in a very specific time period, if I recall. Like, you're not sitting there. You were talking a lot to investors. You're prepping them for the fundraise, and then you executed a small window of time where you started collecting money, and you had your round open. Now, a lot of people, they struggle with that because they just never, they have a target for like, say, $2 million or whatever, and they just never close their round because like people keep ghosting them and whatnot. Like, do you have any advice for founders there in that scenario of where like, I know that you're focused fully on the product and dealing with customers now, which is what you should be spending your damn time on instead of like talking to investors, but it's easy to kind of, because of the difficulties of fundraising, it's easy to spend most of your time fundraising. Any advice there?
Well, I think my understanding, studying entrepreneurship as part of this journey, in various ways, reading and talking to people and whatnot, um, it's about momentum, right? Momentum is critical in fundraising. You have to have momentum. You can't FOMO, fear of missing out, is a huge driver of what investors do. Having a round open forever generally isn't a good idea. I wouldn't say always. I think we actually had something that was open for a very long time, isn't open anymore. But, another really good reading thing on the topic of fundraising is How to Raise Money, the Paul Graham essay. Another thing I read dozens of times. And, it talks a lot about this stuff. But, it also, one other thing that stands out is you're either in fundraising mode or you're not. So you're not I don't spend time talking with investors in any material way right now because, like I said, sales, growing the business, product, all that stuff, that is going to ultimately drive the success of your fundraise much more than talking to investors, I would say.
That's right. Yeah, and that's the phase that you guys are in right now. So let's see. What can you tell us a bit about how you guys are? And I realize that this is some of the secret sauce, right? So you can't divulge all the secrets. However, but what is how are you guys using generative AI today? And what's the value of starting a company in this period where you see you're able to start from scratch generative AI, so that changes your processes in quite a bit, right? Whereas and if you started say 10 years ago, you would have to hire probably 10 more people to do some set of tasks. As now it's well, you know what? We don't need to hire that extra engineer because we're using GitHub Copilot or something of the sort, right? Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate to be launching and starting this company at this exact time because AI really became more accessible and we became more aware of how to use it. I certainly wasn't really using it very much prior to starting the company. I was a little bit, but on the business side, I use it all the time. We use it all the time. It helps you write. It helps you structure a presentation. It helps you organize data. It helps you, problems that would have taken me much longer to do in Excel, can make me go way faster. So I use it all the time. And I could talk more about that if you want, and how that came to be, because I think it's kind of interesting, how people learn to use AI and get really good with AI is through practice. But on the engineering side, I'm not an engineer, but I know that our engineers use it, and they use it to go faster. They use it to do lay out this project, and then they tweak and change and improve, or it'll there are some basic things that it can just code for you, or maybe not even basic anymore. So I think we lean into it very heavily. And there was this quote by Sam Altman about, I'm sure you've heard this, about how as time goes on, companies of $1 billion will be able to start and be one-person companies. And I think that sounds like a stretch, but maybe it's possible. I don't know.
You get the general idea, right? I mean, there's a certain benefit to being a company that's born in this post-generative AI era.
100%. And
your customer service department, for example, you're probably not thinking of as big a customer service department had you started 10 years ago, right? For instance.
So many ways, but I think to what I was kind of alluding to earlier, you have to just go for it, and you have to see what works and then change and try new things and experiment and learn. So now when there's a project that I'm working on, I'm not always going to start with AI. But a lot of times I start with AI now. I don't come to it later. I'll start there, or I'll want to write something, a marketing email or anything, so any kind of thing I want to write. Instead of actually trying to write it all pretty, and well worded and thoughtfully, I just and it's like I want it. But the key is you say what you want it to say. I want it to be like this. I want it to say these things. Like if you know what you want to say in writing, you say it. But that's a lot easier to do now and faster to do with AI, unless you're just so gifted at writing. I'm a decent writer, but AI gets me from 0 to 60 in probably a tenth of the time, or less. So, but I didn't realize at the beginning, and I always learned things and I knew methods, and it's just a constant thing for me.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's just such a huge benefit that you have. You say, I remember coding, right? When I don't mean to date myself, but if we need to learn a new language for coding or something of the sort, we had to look it up in a book, right? We had any questions about coding as we're going through. That was what you were supposed to do. Now, then it became like open source community became a big thing. Then it became all about you don't check your memory banks, you straight up, just Google it, right? And then you go on Stack Overflow and so on. And now it's you just pretty much have GitHub Copilot or even ChatGPT write the entire template for you, and then you just kind of tweak it here and there and so forth. It's a to your point, it's a very, very different world, and a knowledge worker is light years ahead if the more they use generative AI. And speaking of which, people that are in vogue with generative AI and not in vogue with generative AI, I have how are you catering to the different segments of users in the bond market, right? That you guys interface with, you've got there's a reason why Bloomberg is still the terminal hasn't really changed much from a GUI perspective for the past whatever many years, decades, really. How are you catering towards some of the users that are maybe stuck in the past, and some users that are a bit more tech forward, let's just put it that way, and more open to the idea of using an LLM for certain things?
Yeah, it's an ongoing question and thing we're working on. It is, I guess, to back up, when we first launched Bondway, I could never imagine someone in the bond market not wanting to use Bondway, and I didn't understand. And I think that's partially because I'm a tech forward person that likes technology, that wants to be ahead, that wants to learn something that's going to help me be ahead. Not everyone is like that. And just anecdotally, I would say at least 80% of the people aren't like that. Nothing to do with Bondway. It's just new systems, new things. People are busy. They're really busy. Fast-paced market, lots of responsibilities. It's hard to find the time. And no one's going to really tell you to do it. You have to do it yourself as a user. You have to be intrigued enough to devote the time, and then you have to build new practices. I should say that right now our product, it's not a generative AI product. You're not going and using a chatbot at this point. So it is using AI for a lot of things that are very specific to deliver value to customers. But it's, to your specific question of how to get these people to use Gen AI, I think is a little less relevant at this exact moment in time. But I think for us, it's really about how do you get people to embrace and explore new technologies and come up the learning curve and become fluent. And that, again, we're always working on that. That's, we're about to release things right now in terms of how we onboard users to make that better and better. So I understand that's a pretty normal thing for complex applications. So, it's an endless focus for us.
Yeah, ergo that book, Crossing the Chasm, right? You just normally when you have a new technology, there are those that are early adopters, and they're usually kind of like the technical zealots of whatever industry, and they're very, very open to it. But then, like, to get like critical mass, where you get like the mainstream of folks using it, is a different chasm that you got to cross, right? It's another, leap. But okay, with that said, Jeremy, I think that concludes our call. Certainly it's been really, really fun working with the Bondway team as they progress and grow. Obviously you making things look a lot easier than they actually are. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
no, it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate all of your contributions, and thanks for having me. Thanks to everyone that listened, and appreciate you inviting me to be here. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Talk soon.
Bye.